I'm going to let you down by saying that it's me who is going to read it. And Redux is fairly simple library, and I'm going to share my screen now. So Redux. Um, Probably when I was studying Redux, it was the most complex thing to learn because even though it's really simple, even though after some time it's fairly primitive to use, at first there is a lot of boilerplate. There is a lot of things which possible gotchas, and when you're starting, there is a lot of magic happening. For example, we have reducers, action creators, a lot of functions, a lot of dispatches coming out of nowhere, and it's sometimes confusing. And you're like, why should I study it? And in general, my approach to learning is that the first thing you are going to ask while learning some new library is why? Why am I actually doing that? And if I have no answer to that, I'm never learning something. For example, jQuery, I know that every single thing that can be done by jQuery can be done by simple JavaScript. And it's more efficient, and you shouldn't download some packages. That's why I never learned jQuery itself. But with Redux, it's fairly one of the most useful things when it comes to React application. I looked through Mariam's lectures, and I found out that you probably know how to write good code with Redux. And today we are going to go by another path. And today we are going to write the worst code you have ever seen to kind of conceptualize everything we have ever learned and kind of go under the hood of the Redux by going from the basics and like finishing with pretty serious implementations. But still, it's gonna be conceptualized lessons about how things in generally works. So the first thing I want to mention while speaking about Redux, Redux is a state manager. You already know that every component have their own state. It can be like functional components which have hooks use state, or it might be class component which has just this state. Like in just component state, state is not directly immutable in Redux. And what is Redux itself? Redux is the center source of truth. So basically, it's one vault which holds all the information. Why do we need it? Because we might have parent component and its child component, which itself has another child. And sometimes we have to pass down props like 3, 4, 10 times down just to have impact on some one single button's color. And it's bad that all the components which are in the middle are going to receive the props which they don't really need. And that's why the Redux was ever built. So it's a vault, it's an object because everything is an object which holds every single data in our application, and we can independently get that data from any component that we want. Also, I want you to understand that there is two things. There is Redux and there is React Redux. So I can import something from Redux. And this is Redux itself. That is the Vault, that is the methods of communication with Vault, and that has nothing to do with React. So basically, it's adjustable to every single framework. I'm pretty sure, I've never tried it, but I'm pretty sure that it can be done with a simple DOM, I mean, without any framework at all. And then we have import something from React Redux. And that's actually the thing which connects Redux with React components. For now, we will forget about this one, forget about React Redux, because as I said, we are going from the scratch. And since we are going from the scratch, let's just keep it up with Redux. But before that, I want to give you a couple of examples of just state of the application. Let's see how it works, and then let's try to convert that into Redux application. Here, I'm going to create just regular function. Ideally, it's It should be in another folder, in another component. There should be a component folder here with all the components passed there. But for simplicity, since I'm going to connect app, which is the main app, so I have index, which calls app, which is the default React application go by create React app. I'm going to have that function down here, and it will be much simpler to connect them that way. Let's think name for that function, which will be hello world. Indeed, let's not betray our ancestors. It will be a simple function. It will return something like a div. I prepared some kind of a styling, which is still ugly, but it will work. I want to pass simple class name here, which will be this. And then I just want to write something like the technology we are learning is. It's just string template, and I want this template, so the variable passed here, to be coming from the application itself. So basically, what am I doing? I'm passing a prop down here. So the prop will be, let's say, technology name, and that technology name will be passed from here. So here I'm simply calling hello world, and I'm saying that technology name will be equal to React. It's very simple right now. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, so after that, we should pass the technology name itself here, and that should work. Yeah, so the technology now, so right now it's just a static string data, and I want to convert that to something which is going to be the state of the app itself. So right here, I'm going to import use state. I'm going to use that use state here. So I'm going to say that const technology name and set technology name will be coming from use state, and the default will be React. Then I'm just passing that technology name as a variable to the prop, and the result should be the same. Yes, right now I want to create some illustration of set technology name, because this is going to be converted to actions in Redux examples. So right now I want to make something like div here, and I want to pass buttons. There will be, let's say, 3 buttons. For example, they all will have on-click, and every on-click will be having, of course, event, and that event will be receiving set technology name here. Right now, we should pass another prop, which will be on-click. Let's pass it down here. It will be on-click equals to set technology name. I assume that you all learned how to pass props downstairs in React lectures, which you already had. Right now, I'm just setting the state on-click. Now I'm just passing a value of that button like this. I'm just gonna say event target text content, and every text content will be something like, I'm pretty sure I'm missing curly brackets here. Right, and this one will be React. Let's actually copy this thing 3 times and see what we've got. Right now we are having three buttons, and let's change their state because we have all of React pointing to React. Let's say that the second will be Angular, and the third one will be Vue. I hope it will work now. Yes, so state is of course changing, and we are receiving different value as the string literal in the child component. And now I want to slowly move this logic to what we are doing in Redux. So what is actually Redux? Redux is a simple set of functions which are invoked through create store. Create store is a function which comes along with just Redux. Remember that the first part of this lecture is not going to be about React Redux because, yeah, we all know that it's pretty comfortable. It's pretty mandatory for every single production project because it makes the possibility of fast rendering. But right now, let's just focus about inner implementations. And here I'm going to import create store, which is going to be from Redux. And I really hope that I already installed that package. And here I will just create a simple store. Create store is a function which returns basically three methods. Those methods are store.dispatch, that is store.subscribe. So basically here I can say store dispatch or subscribe, and it's store get state. That's like three methods which we can use on the store. And basically in store we can have like every single data in our application, so we don't need to use useState here. Basically, when you're looking on the React component, what you're thinking, if some data which you are going to include in your state, in local state, like this is local state of the application, if it's going to be passed down by one layer, two layer, it's okay to use useState. But if we need to lift that up, for example, if from here, if we have some state here and we want to app to change in background according to the prop we are using here, state we are using here, then we should consider using Redux as our source of truth, because that basically means that this state is global, that we will need it in the future. For example, authentication of the user, web tokens, everything that is needed in the several page are I'm pretty sure that they are going to be in the Redux store. Also, I want to mention that also we have Redux persist. It's a simple library which allows us to put some data from our store in our local storage without any trouble. What it gives us the ability to save the data after reloading. So for example, if I have some form and I'm entering the data there, and on the next page we have error handling, right? If you have error handling there, I want user, when it goes back to the previous page, to see all the information he already entered. For that purposes, the Redux persist is pretty much used. What am I saying is that everything global goes here, and that's an argument to use Redux, that it's comfort. Create store is basically something that accepts arguments. And the first argument it accepts is a reducer, and that one is mandatory, so we cannot go without it. Right now, we should pretty much understand what the reducer is and like what it is giving us. Reducer is here, set technology, and technology is a values of state. Technology is a value, and set technology is something that modifies the state. I cannot say that technology name from now on will be something else. To change that, I need to use set technology name, right? And then type something I want the store to be modified with. In case of Redux, that functionality is handled by reducer. What reducer does is it accepts the action. Action is just an object, we will talk about it later, but basically it accepts the object and it communicates with the store to pass down the right parameters. It just modifies the store, and reducer is surely created, should be created. Let's just get the new folder here. Let's say that we will have reducers, and here I will have index.js. React, like basic React application, is supporting Webpack, so I can simply import it like this without without the GS extension. So basically I'm importing something I don't really know about yet. So let's declare a function which will, or we can just export some function, but let's keep it as simple as possible. Function, or let's make it name, for example. Something like this. It accepts store by default. Let's make it 2 because it's hurting my eyes. It's accepting store, state, and action. But let's forget about action yet. It's just a thing which accepts something and returns something. And the thing that which is exported is the state. So basically, if I'm doing something, it just takes the default state which was before we did something and returns absolutely the same. So this reducer is not modifying anything. So basically, on this example, it would be something like set technology name. So basically, we are setting the something that changed the state, and we are filling it up with some data which we already had. So right now it does nothing, and I don't want it to do something, right? So it's the first argument. I can just make it default export const reducer equals something like that, and I will export that. Like this. In app.js, now I can remove the curly braces and just say reducer from reducers. Auto-completion is really helping me out here. And the first argument passed here is reducer itself. So that's it. We already have some kind of a store here. What can we do? First of all, I would want it to accept something like initial state, because even if I don't have any data, I still should have initial state. Why? Because I want fields, even if they are empty, even if they are undefined or null, I want initial state to hold something so I could know what am I actually changing. Let's just go ahead and create something like initial state, which is going to be pretty much technology name, and it will equal to React. We're doing it here. Now let's just pass that thing down here, like this, and that's basically it. We have our store. Where should we actually use it? We should use it where we want our data to be got. So basically here I can say that const technology name will be store get state. That get state will give us the technology name. So basically get state is giving me the full field set of fields based in store, and technology name is one of the value. So initial state is this combination, and it has technology name which is passed here. That's basically all. And if I pass something right here, I should already have the data to proceed. Let's try that thing out. Yes, so right now, of course, it's not a function because we deleted that prop, but we are getting the data from the Redux store, which is awesome. So let's make it. Yeah, let's make it uppercase, and we are ready to go. What we have to convert. We have the information static data, which comes from the initial state, which is here. And right now, the second prop which we were using is onClick. What is onClick? onClick is a thing with which we were modifying the default state with local state of the app. How can we do that with the Redux? For that, we need reducer. Right now, our reducer is nothing more like a thing which returns state. And that is now not how it's going to work. First of all, let's see what actually reducer is about to receive. Reducer is receiving an object, just simple object, which has type, which has payload. Payload is any information that the object should receive. So it's like anything, pretty much the data. For example, on this example, React, Angular, and Vue would be stored inside of the payload. And type is basically what action we are doing. For example, I want to type will be, I wanna change the content of a header. So type is basically the name of the action we are going to emit. And that's all. And to pass some object inside of here, we need an action creator. And that's another instance which confuses us, right? Because we have reducer, which hell knows what it does. And on top of that, we are receiving action creators. But action creators is actually just a functions which are returning this kind of object. For example, here, I wouldn't want to write that on click. I want to dispatch an object which has type of something and then payload of something. It's not aesthetical to do so, even if you can. So you can do that, but it's just not good because there is a place for that kind of things, and it's not good to keep that kind of data inside of regular application. Let's make it back from what it was, and let's create another instance here. So we have reducer with index.js, and we are creating something like actions, and it will be just index.js as well. As I said, it's just usually like right now we are having just one action creator, but in bigger application, in one single file, there would be something like 10 action creators. That's why we usually don't really use a defaulty export here. And let's keep it that way. Let's say that we are just exporting just const. And by default, how we name our action is what we are going to do. Let's think. So what do we want here? We want to change the header name, right? Change the technology. Let's name it that way. And it will be just an arrow function which receives some kind of a technology name, right? The actual name of something, and returns an object. That object, as I said, this object is going to go in the reducer. So it should return something with the type and with the actual payload. Let's make it object like that. Type. Type should be the name of the action. So for example, this action is dealing only with one action, right? Because this function is going to apply only when we are going to modify the text content, when we are going to modify the technology name. That's why type for it is statical. We don't need to pass it from somewhere. What am I meaning is that this function, even if it has like variable, from here when I will be calling that function, I will be passing different values because I have value of React, I have value of Angular, and value of Vue, but the type should be always the same. I can write the string here, and that would be like change technology name. It's legit approach. Type is just a string, and we can write it like that, but the thing is that in the reducer, we will check for type. So we will have switch case here, and that will check if type is equal to this. So if we have type of change technology name, the technology name field in the state will be modified. And at that step, it's really, really simple to make a mistake because if we are writing strings by our hands, it's really simple to make one character different. That will ruin everything because in switch case, the check will give us false. And because of that, well, that will crash our application. It will just not modify anything and return the bare state. That's why in source, we're creating another folder which going to be constants with its index.js, of course. What we are doing here we are simply saying that set technology name will be equal to absolutely the same string. Mind that basically if we are saying some constant's name, if we are thinking about some constant name, if we know that it's absolutely the constant, of course we can't modify anything written with const, but if something is just a constant, so if we know that it shouldn't be changed and it's like we'll keep it up that way, we are writing it uppercase. It's not camel, it's just uppercase. And here we should basically import that constant here. Just pass from constants. Yes, and now I can be 100% sure that I'm passing the same variable here and here. What else? So right now we have action creator, which accepts type, but also it should accept payload. And payload would be the technology name because from somewhere I will be calling that function. And that function should accept the name of the field, view Angular over React. That's why it has payload here. Okay, we know that. After that, what we are having reducer. So this function should go somewhere. This function is something that we will call, but reducer is actually something that we will check. So what should I do? And we are here saying that what should actually reducer do? This is basically done by switch case. It's common practice to do so, and we have cases. Right now we have only one action creator, and that's why we will have only one case. But in general, there would be a lot of cases. For example, log in, log out, register maybe, and all of them would have different types, and that they would modify the state in different way. State, so reducer doesn't accept just the state. Except of that is accepting the action. An action is the object which is returned from here. What does that mean? Action would have two fields, type and payload, and we are switching by the action type. So what is reducer doing? It's checking if the action type is equal to set technology name. The logic will be applied from here. If it's not this, we will either go to the next case, which we don't have, or go to the default. And that's what you should always remember, that if none of the action was found, if there was some error, if you passed some different type here, like everything can happen. That's why the default case would be just returning state. So our state just not delete our after everything. If you check for action type, it gave false. If you check for another, so if another value, it gave you false. Then like, okay, just return me the state. That's the logic behind that. The type is the set technology name because it's the same variable we used here, and we want to reducer to see this function going along. We don't need break. Why? Because we are actually returning something, and that's the principle Mariami was talking about, that the state should never be mutable. So we are not saying that the state something will be like something else. That's not how it works. Here we should return new object. Right now we of course have just one field in state, which is technology name, but if it's more than that, we are saying that state. We are like trying to open that object. Why? Because if there is some other fields, don't want them to be modified. That's why I'm returning the just the same state, but with different technology name, which will be action not payload. That's actually the thing, because here that object has payload, and I'm just grabbing that payload from the action we received here. That's the main logic behind that. Let's accept that. Let's just do console.log to just be sure that we are doing everything rightly. And let's just say action.payload, which we will try to see in the console. What we are doing here. Here, we should call our action. So it's pretty simple. We are using onClick here, and we shouldn't be, because it should be the action creator. So to modify something, we were using the set state from here, but right now it's not possible because we deleted it, and we should use this in its place. Right now we are going to do something really bad, because this operation is not good to use without React Redux library, which is specially built for us to modify the applicational state. So what am I saying? I should dispatch my event from something. So I want this to be simply like applied. I want to call this function. I want this function to be called on our state store we created here. That's why we are going somewhere, let's say here. Let's create a function. We don't need actually this prop. Let's say that const on click will accept an event. That event will just dispatch store, which is already created, dispatch. And now I should actually call this function inside of dispatch. So right now I said that, what is happening here? Like this, let's make everything arrow function. So right now I'm telling the program that I want this function to be called on the store. Keep in mind that any reference of the store in the real world application is bad, and I will show you why. Right now I want to import my change technology name right here, which I should definitely do. It's not default export, so I'm doing the curly braces from actions, and that's basically it. So now right now we see that this function is accepting technology name. So basically I am calling it with event target or text content. So it's absolutely the same, it's just the data which should be going to the store. So I want to replace every of these events, every functions with the one I just created. I'm just going to say onClick event. Or I can do something even simpler. I can just say technology name. I can put that technology name here. And I can say that event target content will be called from here. So basically I'm converting event to a name right here. Let's see if it works. It does not work. Why? Because in our case, we are not doing anything yet, but let's try out. Actions may have an undefined type property. So I really forgot to do something. Let's check it out. Yeah, so the type. Here we are exporting just regular function, and that function should really accept some kind of a type. And here it's not the regular function, but something that's returning a type of it. Here, if we go to the index, and we are actually going to the point where we are trying to make the application be updated. So even if this would be working, which it would, it's not updating. Why? Because when we were using React Redux or any other library which actually connects, for example, if we were using Angular, we would have something which communicates with React, with Redux. And in that case, it is basically something depending on what components will be re-rendering. As you may remember, the main feature of React is Shadow DOM, and Shadow DOM is gives us the ability of modifying the DOM tree, even only in cases when something is recreated. That means that we cannot control if something was changed. That's why we would need to use something like React Redux. So Redux doesn't really know if something was modified. Of course, it sees that action goes somewhere. It might console log something, but in any case, it doesn't know that according to that change, something should be modified. That's the problem. And that's why we should actually install React Redux here to kind of keep going with the examples. Let me do that. And that is the library which should be learned, if you ask me, in separate way. And it would be kind of another layer of learning. For example, if you're learning the React at first, then you would learn the React Redux, only then you would use something like Redux Tunk or Redux Sagas or Redux Toolkit. So it's kind of step-by-step process, which we are going to like apply shortly. And today's topic, what I want to do is I want to make this thing be affected by something happening in our store. So basically, I want to somehow tell the React application that if I change something, if I dispatch something, that should give me the ability to re-render, which we are going to do with React Redux already. Right now, we are just waiting. Yeah, that's it. We can import anything here. Remove that thing. So what do we have? Before using React Redux, there is a thing called provider. But for that, we need to refactor our code so it would accept several arguments. And by that, let me go to the index.js. We created a lot of index files here. We are going to import provider. Which is a component which we are going to use here. That is significant change. Why? Because right now provider should be accepting some kind of a store. And if it should be accepting some kind of a store, that store should be moved to another file. So we should have, it's the worst structure ever had. As I said, today we are writing bad code. And what I mean by that, it needs a lot of refactoring. So in the best case scenario, we would have a store directory here, which would hold the index in which will be created a regular initial state with its store and with the everything which comes to it. So I would have a directory of store, which would hold the storage itself as an index file, a folder with actions, folder with constants, and folder with reducers. And the only file which should be accepting the Sorry, guys, do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, there was a project call which I didn't track and that turned off the connection. And that was kind of an emergency. Sorry for that. I'm going to share screen again now. I rolled back to the previous commit, so I will kind of introduce everything from right away. What do we got? We got the action creators, which is the technology. Um, in previous commit, I was using different variables name. Don't let that scare you. It's just a set technology and it's set technology action, which is an action creator. And we have reducer. Let me make that on the second screen. So we have a constant which is applying in the two different places, here and in the reducers themselves. When we are going here, we are checking for the action type, and in case it's a technology which is just string set technology, we are returning the state. The main thing is, which I want to mention, is that if we go to the app, we have on button click, which on click just calls the event, and we are using store dispatch. As I mentioned previously, when we are creating the store, I moved the store functionality here, as I said. So store is giving us three main functions, basically. It's dispatch, it's get state, and it's subscribe. Three functions. It's pretty much simple thing. And dispatch is something which actually calls the action. Here, I'm just setting store. Store is coming from the store file, so it's absolutely the same logic, but the store is just exported from somewhere. It's the external file, which has its store, so we are creating something, passing the reducer, which we created, passing the initial state, which is React as well, and then we are exporting it, and exporting just in one place. Why are we doing that? Because here we already see two mentions of the store. First one here, and the second one is here. So in perfect world where we would have two different components for the app and world component, it would be a problem because we don't need store to be called from the checkbox components, from the some small components where it's not needed. That's why store is just moved out. We don't need store to be here actually, because in that case, we would need to pass the store from the up down to the all components we want to interact with it. That's why at this step, we are just importing it wherever we need to and just using it. What is happening here? We are just passing the prop of get state and like getting the technology name out of it. And we are just using it here. What we have, even though event is dispatched, even though, for example, if I go to the reducer, if I go here and say console.log action.payload, even though it would be logged, it won't. So if I go to the console right now, it would work, but not as expected. For example, here, console.log action payload. And if I go somewhere, where is my React application? If I go somewhere here, in console, I would see React, I would see Angular, and I would see Vue, but this content is not going to change. Why? Because even though we dispatch an event, it works, even though Reducer accepted it, so look how many layers of going through the component we have passed. We're having store, we are dispatching an action creator here. Action creator is right away here. It is returning the type and payload. It's all the way down coming to the index.js of the reducer, and the action payload, this payload, is actually passed here. So we see that it modifies the state. We see that it actually, the state is already different. It's really different, but the application still sees it as the same layer. Why? because with React Redux, we exactly know when to update something. So provider, which I was going to write before I received the call, it knows that something changed. It monitors all the changes in the component and um, sees that, hey, something changed. Let's re-render everything. But now when we are using just Redux, it's hard to maintain. To do that, we need to use the third method of the React store, which is subscribe. To use subscribe, we need to give a component. Basically, it's like an event. When we are in DOM, when we are like adding events to a component, we are doing pretty much the same here. In app.js, well, let's say in index.js, we have React DOM render, which is the default behavior of any React application, and we are saying, let's say that this is not just a statement, just a call of a function, but let's say it's a function render. We are having render, which is a function. And right here, we are calling that function. Why am I doing that if nothing changed yet? We are doing that because now on our function, we can call subscribe. So basically, we can say that store subscribe, and we are passing render here. And this is giving me the result. It will actually change it. I'm not sure why yet, but it should. It really should change everything because now our application is ready to receive everything that is needed, basically. Yes, so the render should be a function. And then we are saying that store subscribe should receive a render like this, render subscribe render. Now everything should work because now what happened is that our application really needs something to hold on, for example. Basically, here we are doing the thing that on every single change of the store, our application is changed. Whatever happened, it will update, but it will update in uncontrollable way. Why? Because it's an index file. We can have a lot of different actions here, so everything can change, and that will cause it to be rewritten fully. So there will be minor change on the component, and it will still give me. Maybe I have not exported the names. Something like that, because I'm not sure why I don't need the store. What about now? Yeah, now it works. It works because we subscribe to an event, and whatever happens here, whatever change is made, it's just re-rendering, and that's something which shouldn't be done. Redux is not meant to be used with React. Redux is 2 kilobytes library, which is by its own. It's not modifying the component, and that's why it can't interact with the component. It doesn't simply know that React has a shadow DOM, that it's built in a way to be productive, to be adjustable, to be re-rendered just at the time that something particular is changed. And that's why we came along with the idea of introducing React Redux. React Redux is basically a library, like right here. So what is the issue with this approach? First thing is performance, because we don't need a re-render and we are receiving one. And the second thing, that still those two are different components, and both are having store get state. And get state, along with dispatch, along with subscribe, is very low level API calls. It is not meant to be in the production. It's something that all of the other frameworks like React Redux is doing under the hood. That's why I wanted to show it, like to know how the naked bare Redux library works. But right now, when we are going forward, we can already introduce a library which is called React Redux. And the first thing we should understand, and the thing which you probably already know from Mari, is that we can basically put a provider here, and that provider will wrap our application in our store. So if we do something like provider, we are modifying this store, and we are setting it as the variable from here. Something like this. Let's close this thing and move everything up here. From this point, from now on, our application already sees that something is changed, because React Redux is understanding how the React library works. And it won't be a problem for it to understand, oh, there was some action, let's do something about it. And at this point, we don't need subscribe. We can get rid of under the hood methods, and we can pretty much remove this render too and make it as it was before we touched it. Something like here. Let's make it a little bit more semantical, like this. React Redux, since it was implemented specially for React, we have the great ability to use hooks, simple React hooks, to receive some kind of data from our store. Basically, we need two hooks. One is to modify state, and the second one is to get something from state. We don't need anything more. What should we do here is we should, from here, for example, we are dispatching. So in this component, I should use dispatch hook. And here we are using state get, store get state, and which means that we will be using use selector here. Let's import both. Let's write import use selector and use dispatch. Not sure why isn't it hinting me the dispatch one. We don't need store dispatch, which means that we already don't need to import store from here. So we know that store is in index.js, it's in the provider, and the application already knows that if state is somewhere dispatched, that means that this store, which we provided in the provider, which is logical, will be modified. Knowing that, we can say that this store get state has no meaning right now, and we can write something like this. Const technology name will equal to use selector. And that selector is accepting basically a function which has state by its argument, and it's like the reduce or map or something like that. So it just accepts the callback, and right now we have to specify which field we want to use. For now, let's actually see. If we go to the store.js, we have initial state, which is equal to state here, and we have just technology name on it. So basically, I'm saying that I want state technology name to be returned from use selector, and then I can just pass technology name right here. That was the first problem. So we already know how to take something from state. And the second thing is that we should know how to put something inside of the store, and it's as simple as that. We are just saying that const dispatch will equal to use dispatch. It doesn't need any argument here, and on the button, instead of calling store, we can just say dispatch, and ideally it should work. Yes, because right now it's much more a better approach, and it's more like performance thing, because right now when I'm clicking, it's only re-rendering the thing that should be re-rendered. And if I would call some other action which wouldn't affect this field wouldn't be affected. The last thing I wanted us to talk about today is that sometimes it's really uncomfortable to use selector. Why? Because in bigger applications, you wouldn't have ability to write something like this. It's really common scenario that the hello world component in real world would have something like 20 selectors. It would have 20 properties and all of them would be coming from the store. And that makes it greatly uncomfortable because first of all, it's like hurting my eye right now. And the second thing is that state is never that simple, actually. It may have technology department dot technology names dot something else, and only then would be technology name. That is really upsetting us because we don't need in our inner component that much I don't know, specifications. It's really uncomfortable, it's hard to use, and it's very easy to make a mistake. That's why we have another option how to perform all of that. It's creating a component which will be a middleware of our existing component and actually connect them to the Redux store. It's really common practice, even though many think that it's pretty old technique, and this one, like using hooks, is better. Sometimes, in some cases, it's really efficient, and a lot of big projects are using it. And it's actually requires us to move our Hello World component somewhere. In source, I will create, like ideally, it would be components with the hello world component folder, and only then I would write something like index.js and files which hello world component includes. But in our case, for simplicity, I would say just it will be folder of hello world component, and we'll have 3 files. First one is index.js. The second one would be hello world component .js, and the third one would be hello world component container.js. What is the difference? In component, I would have the same data I was having in the app.js. So for this, I would just move the logic of hello world component, like, oh my gosh, this. But I would just include export default hello world component like this. And it is the regular component. It receives prop, it does something with something. Just let's import dispatch here. Use selector and use dispatch. Let's import everything that is needed. I will want to import React first of all. And I will import use dispatch from React Redux. Right now we are all set because it's per component, it don't need anything. And after that, I want to create a container for it. What is container? Container is a wrapper component you probably learned when you were passing your React lectures. We have higher order components sometimes, and it's kind of a wrapper. It's kind of a something that extends some other components functionality. First of all, I want to import the components itself, because if I want to wrap something inside of something, I will surely need the component itself. I will import that. Since I have default export, I don't need to use curly brackets here. I will just import it, and it will go from the hello world component. I have a component, and also I would need import find action creators from Redux. Forget that I wrote it here yet, because the first thing which we will need is import connect. Connect is also React Redux library, and it actually gives us the ability to connect the wrapper and the actual component together. So from the container, I want to export connect, which is a function. And it receives basically 2 arguments. First is map state to prop, and the second is map dispatch to prop. Basically, first is responsible for the data, and the second one is responsible for the action. And both of them are going to be in the props. For example, here, it will give me an error because I dispatch something which is not imported from somewhere. And that's the purpose. I want to avoid any imports in the component, and I want to move them all into the container of it. So right now I'm doing something like hello world component, because that's how we write higher order components, and I'm just saying that I want it to be default. And in index.js, I want to import something from the container and export it instantly. Why am I doing that? Is that in the app.js, I don't want to import something from the container. It would be more semantical to import something from index. That's why I called the reducer index, constant index, action creator index, and I'm not gonna make an exception with just regular component. I'm gonna write that I want to import. It's a default export from the component container. I will just import hello world component container from here, and I'll just export it right away. I will write it. I will mention it is as just a component, because container is just a middleware, it's just the name of the file, but the actual component is just the hello world component. And since it's default in app.js, I will use this naming, because container is just a wrapper. So why do we need it in the first place? I can have a function which is map state to props, which accepts state and which returns the value of the state. So basically, I want to say that, let's make it 2 spaces. I will say that it return, or just let's say that const like this, const technology name will equal to state dot technology name. So basically, we get some value from the state. It doesn't need to be, I mean, when I was learning, I had the question, like, where is this state coming from? It's coming from the provider. So in index.js, where we provide, like, we had provider, and everything under that provider already knows which store we are using. And that's awesome, because we don't need to say that, oh, get me something from there or from there, because it already knows that the default store is here. It's already provided. And since the principle of the React is that one application has only one single store, it just is logical and it's working. And here we are just returning object with technology name, which is technology name, just the same, and we can use it shorthanded. Right now, it will already work. It just will work fine. But the second argument, second parameter, is actually more interesting. So if we want something to be here, we are just passing map state to props, and that's all. That's the first argument of connect function itself. And the second one is map dispatch to props. Right here, it's even underlined. And it's exactly same function, map dispatch to props. And it is equal to a function which accepts dispatch. Why? Because right here, if we go back to the app.js, we are seeing that there was a lot of boilerplate with dispatch word. And it's really uncomfortable. I don't want to have that much layers of wrappers. I'm using dispatch, then I'm using this, then I'm passing some there, and that is uncomfortable. I don't want to use dispatch that much. That's why dispatch is introduced here. What it does, it actually returns bind action creators. So bind action creators is a thing which makes, like, wraps together the dispatch and the any function. So basically it goes and says that, oh, set technology action is the same set technology action with the dispatch. And it gives me ability to use set technology action without mentioning dispatch. So I will mention it once here, and that will be it. Bind action creators. And the first thing is an action creator, and the second argument is dispatch. It's an object. So here we will have an action creator. That's why we should import it here in the first place. Let's import it. That technology action. And right here, I will just pass it right there. Second argument is just dispatch. That's basically it. I am passing it here, but let's keep in mind that when we are using connect, both returned values from map state to props and map dispatch to props are going to appear in the props of the component. So to get that, we should do something like the name of it was set technology action, and I'm putting it here. And that's basically all. Instead of dispatch, we are using nothing. We don't need it here. We don't need this here. And this will just work right away, except the syntactical errors we have, and except the fact that this is not needed at all because I moved it. I don't need this, I don't need this, and this component will be imported from place called hello world component. And that's why I created index.js file inside of here, because I wanted I didn't want it to do something like hello world container, because it would garbage my whole like import sessions, and that is hurting my eyes, and it's more best practice to do so. Right here, we don't even need the technology name, because all of the props are passing down with the with that is a mistake. Yeah, that's it. So let's remove named export because we have defaulted from there. And yeah, in the component itself, we should just modify the last step would be to remove dispatch, to move dispatch from here, remove it from here as well, and to add the set technology action right there, but just more semantically right. If we didn't make any mistake while coding, that's the result. We are getting absolutely the same, but it's just a bit more flexible. Both approaches are amazing. Using hooks in Redux is the best practice, as many says, but this approach should be remembered because there really is a situation where one single component can receive up to 30 props, and it's really hard to handle in one single component. Another thing is that this component, where is that? This component is actually having a parent, right? So this component has app. In general, in big projects, the best practice is not to use map dispatch to props, not to use this container approach once we have a parent, because from here we can pass something. This approach is basically used when it's a page. Imagine this being an entirely new page, and that will mean that it won't have any parent. It will be just React router, which says that if the URL is something, then render this. And that will mean that it doesn't have legit parent. The prop cannot be passed from somewhere. And if it shouldn't be passed from somewhere, it should be coming from Redux, which is why the component container is used for. It's kind of a wrapper, it's a preparation for the component, it's kind of filling it up with the data. populating it with the correct fields of the like correct store, and that is like wonderful way of making things. Right now, I want you to forget about the implementation where we were calling the store.dispatch, store.subscribe, and store. What was it? Get state. That three of them is low API, and low API shouldn't be used somewhere if we are not writing some kind of a library for the Redux or React, which is highly doubtable. So that was basically the ways of communicating with the Redux store. Now I would really appreciate hearing some questions on this topic. Victoria, hello, are you still here? I guess you're not. That's bad. So any questions, guys, on this topic? And I really hope that you are hearing me right now. Are you hearing me, guys? Someone?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. So you just don't have any questions. Okay, so I think we are free to finish this up. In case of any question, as I said, you can contact me somewhere, preferably on Teams. And that's all. Have a great evening, guys. Goodbye.